this one. Hey, what the heck is going on here? Everybody here went to the Final Cut Pro Creative Summit, and we're going to talk about that. We're also going to talk about Final Cut Pro 10.7. I've been checking all day to see if it's out. It's not out yet. Have you guys checked recently?
Getting echo.
That's okay. This is live. This is the best we can do.
Well, I took paper notes, so I can talk about my paper notes because I didn't break any TOS.
Oh, you did. I took a few. I typed a few in.
See, I don't type anything. If they say you can't do that, I use actually my ancient little reporter's notebook, and I've got bunches of things. The thing is, my handwriting has gone to hell in a handbasket, so I can mostly
and your vision's really bad, so you can't even see it.
Yeah, it's like what?
So you need to take a picture of it with your phone
Connected
and then see if
clips
the iPhone
Yeah, not recognizing gap clips when you toss connected clips into the store. What is that? What?
Well, I'm going to talk specifically about that because I was confused about that connected clips thing. So let's talk about that first, since we already brought it up.
Oh, you want to go?
And then we'll go back.
Sure.
Well, because we already brought it up, we might as well talk about it. So the connected clip, it collapses into a single secondary storyline, and it's not reversible. I thought it was reversible.
Why
The
wouldn't it be
problem was
reversible?
gap clips. Gap clips were a problem because if you're collapsing a secondary that has gap clips into the primary, what do? Do you make that blanks? So they had to figure out a way to recode things so that when you collapse a connected clip, a connected storyline that has gap clips in it into a primary storyline, the gaps have to disappear because that's not what most editors want to do. They want to just take the actual content and ignore the gaps, so they programmed it to do that.
The question is, once you do the collapse, can you go back and edit it?
Kind of. Well, first of all, it should be noted every time you open Final Cut Pro, since it's a live data, undo all the way up to the point that you opened the app. So technically you can undo it. But obviously you can break clips back out of a secondary storyline. That's not a problem. The problem is that when you have a bunch of overlapping clips, based off the hierarchy of what's on the top, it's going to trim the other clips when it consolidates it into a secondary storyline. So I guess the part that's not reversible is if you were to break those out of a connected storyline, then you would no longer have the tops and tails of the original clips before they were collapsed. I don't know why that would be a huge problem.
Think about the problem too of you're collapsing something that has straight cuts into something that has transitions. What do? If that straight cut is landing on top of a transition, do you replace the transition, or do you not replace the transition and let the user resupply a transition based on the new content? A lot of things they had to think about to do this.
Well, that's what I'm saying. What are the rules? Just what you said,
We'll
Bill.
know when they get out and play with it for a week.
Exactly. Exactly.
I have it
but
adding music.
Go ahead.
If I add music to the timeline, it connects to the clips on top of it, and then you can't slide it around. So I have to find out how it's going to affect that. It's been a pain. The only way was to add a gap in there and then slide the music over, and then I could freeform the clips that were on the top. So I'm happy it's there. I just have to figure out how to use it.
I have to go through a little learning curve here.
So that was the answer that I wanted, Bill. I think we don't know until
they said specifically what was the line they used. It was something like gap clips in a secondary storyline act as if they're not there when you collapse it into your primary storyline. Now, that doesn't tell you the whole story, but that's what they articulated from the stage.
Yeah. The other thing I would note on that collapsing is they did say that it will preserve J&L cuts. So if you've extended the audio split edits, they'll be preserved. However, I did hear that they currently don't have a way, if it's the first clip or the last clip and you have a J or an L cut, those will get trimmed when they're put into the connected storyline on the beginning and end of the selection, which makes sense because try to take a clip and do a split edit and a connected storyline, split the audio, and you can't pull it this way at the end, and you can't pull it that way at the beginning.
Basically, what they said was that it basically treats gap clips like empty space, not like a thing, which is what a gap clip typically is. It's a thing with duration and everything else. So
I'm going to make a announcement right now. I will review your Final Cut Pro 10.7 tutorials for free this week only. Anybody who has Ripple training, I'm talking to you. If you have 10.7 tutorials coming out, I will review it for accuracy this week only for free. After this week, no dice. So I'm expecting Ripple training will have some kind of a tutorial out about, because it was confusing. I thought you could collapse them, but I thought you could open them up to readjust if you wanted to redo things. I don't know. Is it one way and it's locked? That doesn't seem like that's going to be very effective.
Or locked is the right word. It's just trimming it for you.
Okay.
Based off of what's on top. And then that makes a ton of sense. I've had to work with lots of different editors. Before the show, we were talking about cinema therapy, and I've had to look at those editors' timelines. And some people who are less comfortable with Final Cut will stack a lot of stuff on top of each other. And the idea that I could just take all that mess and select it and then collapse it to a connected storyline brings me a lot of joy. It will save me a lot of time. And I'm also interested to see if that behavior can work in different ways with audio clips, because I have some ideas of how it could maybe speed up audio turnovers. I know that, like I said, the audio itself is split edits are preserved, but there's also a command to trim the audio to the video clip duration. So maybe you could collapse them and then trim those, and that could clean up audio turnovers when you don't want to have a lot of split edits. And if I don't know if people have dealt with this, but when you hand over an AAF, they can get really messy Final Cut to Pro Tools if you've got a ton of stuff layered on top of each other. Maybe there's a couple steps in this using this workflow that could clean up those turnovers and make it a little faster, because I've had to manually get rid of split for and
Was this one of those features that nobody asked for specifically and Final Cut just slipped it in there? Or was this always a feature request? Because I was kind of surprised.
Well, my suspicion is that, so they announced, 6 kind of major things that they talked about. Another one was the roles improvement, where they've split audio and video roles and separated them into lanes so that there's not always married as married together. So I'm thinking that the teams working on the timeline did a little work in a lot of areas, and these are 2 that they kind of signaled out as a particular thing. Of the 5, I think all 5, or of the 6, because, dupe detection is, I kind of consider 5B because we've had it for a while. They just made it a lot smarter. Of those 6, I think all of them are going to be useful for me almost every day that I work. So I'm really happy.
Well, tell me about the improvement on dupe detection. I'm not familiar with that. I missed that somehow.
Well, they've made it smarter. So dupe detection used to be a kind of the way that other people do it is like, is this clip in your timeline or not? If it's in your someplace else, let's just put a hash mark over it so you can see that it's a dupe. They realize that the way people are shooting now, particularly with these higher res cameras, it's very common for somebody to take a 3-shot and push in on person 1 and then push in on person 2 and push it on person 3, then maybe come out to a 2-shot or a 3-shot for the wide. Well, that's the same clip, but you're using it for different purposes. So my understanding from the presentation is that they're going to allow you to understand, they're going to give you in the timeline index an indication of which clip comes from the same source clip and let you make the decision about whether that's a dupe or not. I mean, it's technically a dupe, right? Those 3 different of one clip is all one clip, but you may be using it as 3 separate clips. So you have to get a mechanism in there so that people can understand how to deal with that. And that's what I think they worked hard to give us.
It shows you the exact portion, the ins and outs of the section of that clip that you actually use. So if you want to reuse something else, you can without interfering with dupe detection.
Yeah.
It works on iPad that way, which is great.
So here's a question we probably should answer. Based on the Creative Summit, do you think the Final Cut Pro team has plans to add transcriptions directly into Final Cut Pro? We don't know that. We don't know the answer to that question. They do not tell us about future features. But
no future roadmap discussion.
Has somebody been beating up all the Final Cut editors saying that Premiere got transcriptions and so you don't have it, so you're not cool anymore? And I always just say, Philip and Greg have had this in there for 6 years.
Yeah, Mark Spencer said, use Builder, quit complaining.
Yeah,
but
it's just weird,
Yeah, but people have been telling me for years to use Chris Hawking's thing for the scrolling timeline.
Oh.
So, yeah, I said no.
Command post.
I said no, I don't want to use that.
Cool.
I want the scrolling timeline.
And looks like they've done a brilliant one. The ballistics of the scrolling timeline that starts, it always centers your timeline in the middle of your screen. So if you decide to go fast forward or fast back, the scrolling will react to that and catch back up to you. The demo of that was pretty cool.
It was, but Logic does that already. Logic does exactly. Yeah. I'm just saying that's the other Pro app. So Logic does the same thing. It has a slow speed up and slow down to get the the playhead to come back to center. But to be honest with you, I've been expecting a scrolling timeline for 15 years, but I wasn't expecting it in 10.7 for some reason. I was expecting other things. And when they showed that scrolling timeline icon on the screen, I just what? I said, you've got to be kidding,
Richard.
Well, not mine and plenty of others. I mean, it's been a lot of people's requests.
Everybody in the room, because I went, oh my God, really loud, without even thinking about it. I've been complaining about that, Richard. You know this. I've been complaining about it for years. When you work on long form and you're in a 34-inch or 37-inch monitor, and your timeline is really long, and you're making audio edits and other edits, and then the waveforms just disappear, and then you have to stop and recenter to figure out where your cursor is. I hate that. It just slows everything down. So for me, the scrolling timeline, I can hardly wait to use it again.
Well, I know where the playhead is. It's off the screen. It's completely off the screen until you stop the playhead. Then it jumps back to the center. Anyway, there was
also a lot of discussion of why we didn't have it for so long, and it apparently turns out that it was because they didn't want to slow the interface of Final Cut down to allow for the redraw of all of those high-resolution waveforms in a scrolling thing. They said that it just becomes incredibly difficult, and we could have given it to you, but it would have really hurt the experience of using Final Cut, which to me, the single best thing about Final Cut is that it just disappears, and you can as fast as you can think. Anything that bogs you down would be way more annoying than what you'd get by not having to use two fingers on your trackpad and scroll down the timeline.
Right. No, I understand I've heard those excuses for years that the waveform redrawing was the issue. And I said, okay, but at some point you have to catch up, which apparently they have now, because, I'm working on 2-hour timelines. And I'm doing this for hours back and forth, but not anymore. Not anymore. Okay, 10.7, you are a godsend as far as I'm concerned of NLEs. I don't have it yet, but when it comes here, I haven't checked in the last half hour. I've been checking all day because today is Tuesday, and they know we're live. The Final Cut Pro team knows we're live. A lot of times they sneak things out when we're live. Those little tricky devils.
Tricky guys.
Just so we can't
2 hours though. I've been doing all my audiobook narration, and I got 14-hour timelines now. That's really hard to manage.
It is.
You do a command to show it on your screen, and you can't see anything.
Yeah.
Have you heard of chapters, Bill Davis?
Yeah, but there's a reason I want to do that, because I'm using roles and I'm also using keywords to be able to hop to various parts of performance. And that character may have showed up in chapter 3 and then may have been gone until chapter 21. So if I'm working in blocks, I can't hop to different performances of that character and figure out how to make them as consistent as possible. Every different use.
Gotcha.
I'm always reminding myself that, people say I need this, and it's just because every editor has different things that they need that'll make them happy. And the team tries to fit something for everybody, I guess.
So it says the only future, Apple won't talk about future roadmaps, except they've shown us 10.7 in person. We're allowed to talk about it. They said spatial audio is coming, I guess, for the Vision Pro. By the way, did you all get your personalized Vision Pros? It was under your seat at the Spaceship campus, signed by Tim Cook.
I left it at the Airbnb. Unfortunately, I forgot it. So
I was wondering.
I only got a Vision monocle. It's one eye, and it's very hard. You have to keep your other eye closed, or it gets very confusing.
Yeah.
Richard, you know what I did? That beautiful Apple badge that we got, I left it hanging on the back of the hotel door.
Oh, you did? I have mine somewhere, the orange one.
Yeah,
There's
that's
mine
so
in front of
nice.
me.
one.
It
So
was.
Bill got it. I love those.
I wish I could put a light behind it because it's a lovely badge. Probably the best badge I've ever been given.
I think it's the best Apple, because the other one was this little magnet I have here somewhere from 2019. So what was it about? There you go.
Oh, you
What
got me
was
the
it?
ID trackers from the
Exactly. Exactly.
Apple Store on top of me. Yeah.
What was it about this summit that was, it just seemed, the energy level seemed extremely high. I'm not sure why. Maybe because we had to walk a mile to get to the presentation hotel from the hotel we were staying at. At least some of us did. I'm not sure. I walked the first day, and then I took Ubers for the second and third days.
I think
Bill,
that was part of why the
I think
energy
people
was
just.
up. Go ahead, Brad.
Oh, I was just saying it. I don't know if I'm saying the same thing, but because we haven't been in person for 4 years, I think there was a lot of pent up feelings and emotions about getting back together with people we haven't seen in person for a long time. So that's what I got.
I agree, but it seemed more than that. Maybe because we didn't get anything in 2019, and we were hoping. But I talked to you at lunch before we went to Apple Park, Brad. You and your table, and we were saying, well, it's probably going to be 10.7. It seems like it's the right time. We went through our things, and of course, that's what we got. Because initially, they didn't even say 10.7. Initially, they just showed us the update and didn't say 10.7 when they did the presentation. And I'm like, is this 10.7 or is this 10.6.11?
I will say the keynote
think the
presenters
last
tended
thing I
to
said
be
to you-
younger and hipper than they were in the past. I mean, we had iJustine, who has a billion views on YouTube, who really kind of hit it out of the ballpark in terms of talking about how she uses Final Cut. Who was the guy that came to iJustine? I have it written down here somewhere. Chris Lawley did iPad editing for Final Cut, and he's got 172,000 YouTube subs. So that was interesting. Justine has 7.1 million. Yeah,
Right.
7.1 million. And then people like Danny Toe, who they showed off his work, and he's very young and very talented and just was such a nice guy. I think the energy of that new generation coming in, because there were a lot of people there who were under 35, 40 as well. I was really happy to see that. It felt like there's new blood, and it's not just all those of us who've been hanging around forever. Not that, I don't want to see us go away.
Right.
Making payments on
Dylan
things. So.
Wasn't Dylan Bates just so charming
Dylan's
and
great.
smart,
Yeah.
fun?
Yeah, I met him a couple years
Exactly.
ago at NAB. Yeah.
Oh, did you?
I think
He's
that
so
was some of the
tall.
energy, is that there's new blood in.
Yeah.
I think that's absolutely part of it, but it was, I guess everybody was expecting the update, and they didn't disappoint. Plus Apple Park. So it was some of the younger generation. It was the expectation of 10.7, which came, and also finally going to Apple Park, because Bill, if you remember, we were promised Apple Park in 2018 and 2019. Well, we weren't promised, part of the agenda. And then it didn't happen. So
kind of happened.
yeah, this time it did.
Yeah.
they included Apple Park in the actual logo. I said, they can't change it this time, but I kept checking. I kept checking the website. Did you change it? Did you change it? And finally...
The sad thing was they said we couldn't show any of our pictures from inside Apple Park, and I got a stunning picture of Apple Park with that magnificent sunset, and I can't show it to anybody.
Yeah. I will say, ironically, I do think that the actual room where they did the presentation was not as good as Infinite Loop Theater, just because that was more conducive
Correct.
to seeing the stage and the screen, whereas we were, it was a kind of a low ceiling and just rows of chairs, and I was towards the back of it, and the timeline was covered up mostly by people's heads, and that's where most of the action is happening. Having to look around and like, what are they showing? So, ironically, it was like really exciting that we all got to go to Apple Park. It was a little bit like, oh man, I wish I could see the screen a little bit better. So I didn't necessarily love the room we ended up in
right, I agree. The theaters are better, but I did get a picture at Apple Park. I did get one.
You're gonna get a. Oh
There
my
you are,
gosh!
the 2 bills.
I asked.
They allowed this.
I asked Bill Davis on the left if I could take a picture of the two Bill Davises, the two Bill Davises, and he said yes. So I got permission for this one picture inside of Apple Park that I can post because I've said for years, I said I've never seen you guys in the same place at the same time, and I'm not convinced that you're not the same person. Different disguises. Here we go.
And Bill's wife, Jessica, always teases me, my other husband, and she's just the sweetest person in the world, and I always laugh. They're just really nice people.
Absolutely, absolutely. So there's a couple of things that I mean, there's a lot of things I took away, but a couple of things is Apple, the Final Cut Pro team, is going to update Final Cut Pro on their schedule. They're not going to be pressured by anybody else's schedule, like my schedule. They said we're just going to update Final Cut Pro on our schedule. That's just one of the things we're going to be doing. So between that and the fact that 10.5, 10.6, and 10.7, those full number updates have not been the big updates that we were expecting from 10.0 to 10.4, it seems like they're not making that big a deal out of the full number updates anymore. They're just consistently updating features as it goes along. That's what
entirely. Oh, go ahead. I was going to say, here's something entirely speculative, but if in fact the reason they gave for things like the scrolling timeline being that the performance of the majority of the machines out there, not the very high-end machines, but for their entire users group, for editors and things like that, just wasn't up to doing things like a scrolling time, the complexities of Final Cut in it, then they finally feel that they're able to do that. And that may be probably because the M series chips got from M1 to M2 and now M3, and they are screaming fast, and it appears that they feel they can present the same experience to the editor. That's seamless. I don't want to think about the mechanics. I just want to get into my footage and edit. If they feel like it took that long, then how many years have those been on the drawing boards and them figuring out, okay, we haven't really gotten it there yet. It's going to wait for the next series of chips and then the next, and okay, we've finally gotten there. We can do it this year and do it right so that we're not bother anybody by putting this feature in.
Yes.
Potential reason.
No, I absolutely agree with that, Bill. I guess my point is that we're used to, from 10.0 to 10.4, when we got a full number update, there was a whole laundry list of features. 10.5 didn't have it, 10.6 didn't have it, now 10.7 didn't have it. That's like the new way they're doing the updates. We're not going to add a whole bunch at the full number update point. We're just going to add them consistently through each iteration. So right now we're at the 10.7 era of Final Cut Pro. So people that said, well, I didn't get this feature, I didn't get text-based editing, I said, this is 10.7.0. This is the beginning of the 10.7 era. This is not the middle or the end of it. It's the very beginning. So let's wait and see what other features they add along the way.
Absolutely.
But aren't you...
There's also the convergence, though, because remember one of the first things they said in the product, this is one of the things I wrote down, the beginning of the future for Final Cut for Mac and iPad. We're very careful to say for both platforms. I took that to mean that they're not going to kind of meld entirely together, but they do feel like touch-based editing, which was a theme they brought to us over and over again through this year's Creative Summit, is something they are very interested on. I think they're going to truly expand the potential for Final Cut as an editing tool on iPad as iPad continues to go out. You can imagine the schools that are going to be happy to buy into that kind of thing. And so if you're learning on an iPad inexpensively and can use things like roles and use things like magnetic and the brand new voiceover tool that they've just put into the Final Cut for iPad tool. So people are going to be doing that kind of thing. I would imagine it's going to blow up in schools. Go out and do a quick story and bring it back to class. I'm going to interview my friends and it's all on the iPad and I can bring that back in, maybe move it to a laptop for Final Cut, maybe just continue to cut on the iPad. That at the beginning for those kind of, for mobile journalists, imagine the people who are in these war-torn areas now where that's all you have to do is have an iPad and you can get a story out from someplace onto the web and to the world. This is the kind of thing that is transforming what editing may be headed toward in the future. So I'm just glad that they were very clear about Final as an app. The main cut is going to keep going and it's going to keep developing. But this new Final Cut for iPad is going to develop alongside it.
So speaking of that, Bill, I was asked by the audience, this audience, Final Cut TV audience, to ask them about if Final Cut's going to go the way of Aperture. So I asked the first question, bang, right out of the gate. And I asked them point blank. I said, this is what the audience, this is what some of the people want to know. They feel like it's headed towards the way, the way that Aperture went. Not as many updates, et cetera. And they were just adamant, crystal clear, absolutely not. That's not going to happen. Now, do you guys remember the one quote that I was asked not to quote from that question? I said, can I quote you?
From my mind.
Well, I'm not going to say who it was. I'm not going to say what the quote was. I'm just wondering if you guys remember that, guys, and Cirina. Somebody said, I said, can I quote you on that? And they said, I wish you didn't. So I said, okay, I won't.
I would prefer that you didn't.
I prefer that you didn't. That's exactly what.
It was a strong, although polite response.
Well, I asked, but that's okay. It's okay. They basically reiterated the information in that quote anyway. No, absolutely not. There's no connection between Final Cut and Aperture, the way it's being handled. And they went on to say, we have plans for Final Cut for the next 6 months and the next 5 and 6 years. Right? So that 10-year roadmap has now been extended to 15 years. So
I think the future looks bright.
It's their fault. I bought a new iPad because of that presentation on the Final Cut on the iPad. Like that was going to happen.
You did?
Yeah, I did. I bought the new iPad. And then I got home.
You didn't hear they're updating that in 2 weeks?
Yeah.
I'm just kidding.
Yeah. Well, that's what happened. There's an M1 Mac behind me. Richard, I bought that French for the assistant editor, right? The little iMac when the M1s came out. And shortly thereafter, they announced the M2s. I went, what? So, but I got $500 credit for my other iPad.
And now,
you did?
The M3. Go figure.
I just don't use the iPad that much. I mean, I just don't a little bit. So I'm not going to buy a new one. I'm not going to buy a new one.
I have to tell you, Final Cut on the iPad, it really works well and it's easy to use. And I was thinking, because I had just come off of a shoot in Washington, D.C. I had all this media, and I had to wait till I get back to the hotel in Cupertino, right, to even start working on it. Had I had Final Cut on the iPad, I would have actually been able to start cutting right there on the screen. I don't like working with the laptop because it hits the back of the seat in front of me. It's kind of uncomfortable.
Yeah, it's kind of a pain on a plane. Those tray tables are not very good at it.
Yeah, no. But I don't know. Final Cut on the iPad works really well. I was very impressed. More than
The more I
thought.
see it, the more I like it. But I'm still a LumaFusion fan. I've been using that for 2 or 3 years, and I can use it on my phone.
Software.
I can use it on my phone.
Yeah.
It's amazingly effective on the phone. There is no features that LumaFusion on the iPad doesn't port over to the phone version. It's feature parity across both of them, and I was shocked. But anyway, the more I see Final Cut on the iPad, especially on that bigger iPad screen, the more I like it. I was very impressed. Well, that little teeny voiceover, you can move it around the screen on the new iPad.
I'm really intrigued with the voiceover in the iPad. I know a lot of people who do voice work, and to have something that's completely silent, that has no fans, that is that small and easy, and the potential to be able to track on it if you're in a quiet enough environment, I think a lot of people will be doing that as just their regular, I'll just get one and put it in my briefcase, and now I can work anywhere if I can find a quiet corner.
Absolutely. So, Bill, do you have Final Cut on the iPad? Do you have the iPad that runs it?
I do not yet. I've been waiting. I have an iPad Pro from about 2 generations back that sits beside me here, and I use it for really a slide generation and things when I'm doing a Zoom. So it's plugged into my ATEM Mini, but I'm seriously thinking they're going to get more of my money because of that. I'm looking forward to diving into it.
Right. I would, if I wasn't going to get a new MacBook or a new M3 Mac of some sort, whether it's a Studio or the new MacBook Pro, I would consider getting the new iPad, but I'm not going to get both. And I like this MacBook Pro. I know, Bill, you've been a proponent of MacBook Pros for years, way before I was.
I can't believe how powerful this machine is. It's unbelievable. And they're doing benchmarks, and I guess the M3 chips are going into the laptops before anything else. And the delta between what you get now on a laptop, and I'm not saying, don't get mad at me, people. I understand there are people who need towers, and there are people who need all sorts of things. Excuse me. But the ability of this laptop, I went from an Intel-based Mac to an M2 Max chip in this laptop. It's killer.
Absolutely. So I haven't decided yet if I'm going to get the M3. What about you, Brad? Because you had it on your...
I'm skipping it. I'm still bitter a little bit about the Scary Fast event not showing Final Cut, so I'm skipping it. No, that's not the only reason why. I think the M1 Max that I have is really nice. I'm interested to see what an M3 Ultra might look like, and I think I'm going to maybe hold off a year before I upgrade my MacBook Pro, just because it works so well already.
I have to agree.
I understand that it's faster and faster and faster, but I'm like, I have to have that job come up that demands that, maybe if I'm required to shoot in 16 or some crazy thing, that might be the thing that pushes me over the edge. But for now, I'm very, very happy with my M1 Max.
So one of the surprises to me was Storm Smith's presentation that this comment talks about. It was stunningly just fantastic presentation. So I recorded, my goal was to record 5 minutes of everybody that I could, just to have a sample of the recordings, but I recorded the entire Storm Smith's presentation. I recorded the entire tips and tricks. I recorded the entire iJustine panel, and maybe one other one. But Storm Smith's there's a little bit of the audio at the beginning I'm trying to get, but it was phenomenal. She's from down here, down in D.C., from Gallaudet University. I didn't know that she was from down there. That's down in Washington. I've been there before.
She's an amazingly talented filmmaker. I knew her back when she was working at BBD&O and producing movies and directing movies. She's pretty amazing. I love that speech too. I think of all of them, that was probably my favorite.
It was really, really good. So we have a question: lack of FCP on display at the recent Apple event. Instead, the display of resolved indication Apple maybe think of. We've already discussed that. They said there's no way. They said, I brought it up Aperture, Final Cut Pro, no. Not only Final Cut Pro has plans for the next 6 months, they have plans for the next 5 or 6 years. So the answer to your question is no.
Gabe, I think, gave the perfect answer to that, which is they want to sell hardware to all creative users, not just Final Cut users. And if you look at Adobe historically, I think they've been a little, like Resolve's had a lot of face time at these events. But I think Adobe's, especially Premiere, has been a little left out.
Right.
While I have my personal biases and I really don't like Premiere Pro, I can understand that Apple would want Premiere Pro users to buy Mac compute well.
Sure, absolutely. The one of the other things at the Apple Q&A was they gave a compliment to DaVinci Resolve. Do you remember that? I specifically took note of.
I told you they erased my mind after that whole.
Oh, they did the Men in Black thing with the pen. They put on those
sunglasses.
Yeah, exactly. No, they gave a compliment. They called out DaVinci Resolve specifically and said it was either a very good NLE or a great NLE. I can't remember exactly what they said, but I was pleasantly surprised because I think that's probably
it keeps us on our toes, I think is what I heard.
Well, that's fair. And if you can edit without the keyword database, if you can edit without magnetic timelines, which to me makes me about 50 to 75% faster than without magnetic editing, if you can get by without roles and all the other things that are specific to then I think DaVinci is your absolute best secondary choice. It is certainly newer code and runs faster on these modern machines than any other software that I know about. But I just can't. The idea that I would have to give up keywords, oh my God, that amount of time that saves me every day. The idea that I would have to give up roles, no thank you. It would feel like I was dropping back to editing 15, 20 years ago.
Right, but roles can be improved though. We could have some kind of a roles-based system mixer or whatever to work with roles.
That's editors
something
who need that kind of mixing panel and they want the tactile thing. Yes, absolutely. That's not how I do my audio, so I don't. But other people will.
Right.
I was going to say though, with Resolve, I do have quite a bit of hands-on experience with Resolve, and I edited a couple short films and a couple features, including a feature earlier this year. Resolve's ability to render and export video seems unmatched, even sometimes by Final Cut. The quality is really good. My only problem is I actually find that when it comes to editing on the timeline in Resolve, its playback is not actually as good as Final Cut's. It doesn't keep sync as well. It freezes more often. It can't handle the higher resolutions as easily. So it's interesting that there's some give and take. While I can technically render things out of Resolve a little faster, I can't in the day-to-day working. I find it just hangs in very bizarre ways. They are obviously always improving, and Resolve's got an insane amount of features. On the roles thing, I mean, I just hope that that's something that is still being worked on. And I think in our heads, we think of a traditional audio mixing panel and being able to pipe roles and sub-roles to that. And I think that's interesting, but more importantly for my workflow, I think it'd be better to have effects that you could drag onto video and audio sub-roles and roles. And that could be a way that you, for example, could do in Resolve, you can do grouping for color correction.
Right.
If you had that ability in Final Cut, you could do all sorts of workflows. It would be amazing to be able to just, on your dialogue roll, put a limiter or something on there and have it done in one fell swoop. So you're still using clip to clip for maybe your volume automations and specific effects, but you can pipe things out a lot cleaner. So I think there's a lot of interesting things that roles could do. And in my opinion, what they've done so far, it's like, well, I'll go mirrored this way. What they've done so far is they've gotten us here, and then there's this kind of break and chasm. And then we have some awesome abilities to export clips using roles like multi-track QuickTimes, which is amazing, and audio stems. But there's this missing piece in the middle. And more than any other aspect of Cut Pro, I feel like that is the missing hole to make the application feel complete. Everything else, like descriptions, that makes those feel like additional things that are pushing the product future in the future. But as far as what I see as the original vision of the application, that's the whole.
But you did get, in fact, let me see if I can do this. I think I can pull this up. Yeah, there we go. So this was my little notes pad from our visit to Apple thing. And one of the things, you can see my highlight, but down here at the bottom, if you can see where I'm highlighting, the multi-engine HVEC and H.264 exports. I think that's one of the 6 things that they put into the near future. It's coming out now in 10.7. That's one of the things that I think, that and all the stuff up that the M3 architecture allows up at the top there. I mean, 48 streams of ProRes 442 just coming out of your laptop. That's pretty insane. And I'll let you read through some of these. I highlighted on those blue ones down on the bottom, but there were a lot of other little things that was kind of snuck up as things that they announced or said definitely was coming into Final Cut.
So I want to add a little note to the. I was going to say the multi-engine HEVC4 export. It was pointed out to me by Gabe. Actually, he's like, that doesn't actually work for all Apple Silicon machines, and I had to go to the fine print in the press release, and it is for Macs and Ultra processors only. So it won't work with your base model and your Pros, which it just the hardware isn't there, but that's an important note.
Will be kneeling that kind of thing. Yeah, don't buy too small.
No,
I
absolutely.
Have a problem with that.
So I
would say the scrolling timeline, put a pin in that one thing.
Yeah,
the laptop demoed the scrolling timeline was a 14-inch base model M3 in the hands-on area. And that thing was flying with it. So I wouldn't underestimate it. I'd just say you can definitely do more with more horsepower, obviously.
What about Intel machines in the scrolling timeline?
Oh,
people have asked that. People have asked that. What about Intel machines in the scrolling timeline?
I'd be leery. I think it's time. I mean, they've got 3 generations of new chips that are recoded to be screaming fast with Final Cut. So I think it's kind of time to retire the Intel stuff. That's personal feeling.
No, I understand. What I tell people is this. I said, first off, the Mac OS is still running on Intel. And I think as long as the Mac OS is running on Intel, that Final Cut they will both run on Intel. Now, I think, you have the option of turning the scrolling timeline off, but if you really want the full advantage of the scrolling timeline, you really have to update because the Intel machines are 4 or 5 years old at this point.
Yeah. Will it run? Yes. Yeah. Will it run smoothly for an editor who has to get a lot of work out? That's still yet to be determined.
Right. So they did pre-announce spatial video in Final Cut for next year. Didn't they announce that?
Yes, for everybody on the planet who doesn't have Vision Pro goggles yet.
Not at the event. Subsequently, yes, they did. I've seen the update that they said a press release, and part of the press release or something. There was some kind of a thing where they going to include that in a future version of Final Cut or next year or something like that. Somebody posted it.
It's reasonable to think that they would have a set of goggles that can shoot in spatial video, and they wouldn't make Final Cut capable of taking that footage in and editing it. I believe that they would do something like that. That doesn't make any sense. So I think it's going to be the initial.
I have no doubt it's coming, but I've not seen an official announcement of Final Cut. I saw that in a beta of the iPhone software, 15 Pro Max. The beta has the spatial audio recording. I have not seen anything regarding Final Cut. I'm sure it'll come.
Well, I've seen somebody posted that. I should have saved a screenshot, but somebody posted the actual link that Apple said that or something. So I did see a post about it. It was official, but it's not like it's a preview, and they weren't going to let us put on the goggles. Whatever you call those things. What do you call them? Goggles?
I got to step away because I got to turn a camera on here.
Okay.
For something else somebody said.
Okay.
It's definitely not.
No, it wasn't in the 10.7. It was subsequent. It was like a day or two after.
It's not like there's not a press release in the newsroom about that.
No, it was just
the
it
Final
was
Cut
some.
for iPad. Yeah.
No,
Anyway.
I know I saw it.
Look.
I know I saw it. It was a link to an Apple informational thing that it was going to be coming. So I should have saved it, but I didn't. No, by the way, DaVinci Resolve got App of the Year on the App Store. DaVinci Resolve for the iPad.
I imagine a lot of people downloaded it. It's
DaVinci
free.
Resolve for the iPad got App of the Year and for the iPad. One of three.
Because it's not.
Wow.
Well, they have a studio
Resolve
version.
on the iPad was one of the laziest ports I've ever seen. There's no redesign or rethink of the interface for an iPad. It's like the most useless thing I've ever seen.
What about the studio
But
version?
if you're using it, great. Let me know.
Well,
Nice.
Apple liked it. Apple liked it.
Yeah.
You know, they can't give Final Cut Pro on the iPad the award. That would be ridiculous. So,
Well, it has to be third
Nepo
party, but-
awards. It's
And
part of the family,
LumaFusion-
so we're going to give it an award.
LumaFusion got it 2 years in a row or something like that when they were
They
before.
should have given to Procreate and the animation Procreate thing. That is the coolest I've ever seen for the iPad.
Okay, yeah, I keep hearing about that.
The new animation editing and animation in Procreate looks amazing. Although not officially out. Maybe it'll be 2024.
And Richard, I just saw a question go by about, do I need a studio because I can't live without all the I/O? So I'm going to switch to my secondary camera here. This is where I'm sitting right now.
That's
And
pretty
I have
dramatic. Cool.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5 screens that are showing all or part of the interfaces that I'm using every day. So I've got a horizontal monitor, I got a vertical monitor, which I usually use for scripts when I'm doing voiceover stuff here. But right now it's showing some notes. My main screen, my teleprompter screen, which is mirrored to the overhead big screen. So the point I'm saying is I thought too that I was going to have difficulties with I/O in terms of just working on a laptop. It's turned out not to be kind of that way for me. Everybody's going to be different, but plugging all these Thunderbolt lines out and attaching them to various things, they've just come a ton with even the laptop software. And these chips are so fast, they can balance 4 or 5 pretty large high-res monitors without breaking a sweat.
Well, on my 2021 M1 Max MacBook Pro, I have 3 monitors and I have 3 RAID 5s connected. Mm-hmm. And I can capture mini DV tapes. I have an older dock that has FireWire port, the FireWire E100 port, and I've captured that. And what else do I have? And I have an Apollo Twin X interface. I have a Stream Deck. This is all running off my 2-year-old MacBook Pro.
It's scary
3 RAID
how fast
5s.
and capable these chips are. It's just scary.
No, it is. And that's why I'm debating whether to go to the M3. If they have a sale, sometimes B&H has a sale on these MacBooks, every once in a while. I'm definitely going to get the black, though. Absolutely going to get the black. And then I have to get a 4 terabyte SSD. Brad taught me that a couple years ago. I was going to get the 2 terabyte,
At least.
and he said he was going to get the 4 terabyte. And I said, well, I can't go to NAB and have Brad help me have a bigger hard drive than me. I said, I got to get the 4. And of course, I would never go back to, definitely not a 1 for me. I'd have to give, the 4 is great. I don't know if I'd spring for the 8 because the 8's like $12,000 or something. I don't know what the heck.
What's the acronym? GAS, Gear Acquisition Syndrome. You've got it bad. And so do I. And so does
Yeah,
God.
absolutely.
I had a friend.
I'm a recovering.
Money. All the money on it. There's like how many workstations here and how many monitors, computers, and every iteration of Mac all around me. Then there's George Edmondson at Seed Creative, who uses older equipment until it dies, and he's doing amazing work. So I don't think people should be, because they can't afford to buy all this new equipment. I mean, it's great, but you can still do great work on the older stuff.
You can. Now, people that are watching, you tell us this Final Cut Pro 10.7 comes out, because they do sneak it out sometimes on these live when in the middle of a live stream, and they have in the past.
There was actually one of the presenters at this thing, Andy Toe, who is the young fellow who has a YouTube practice, was talking about the fact that he showed his timeline, and we all saw people back when they were learning how to use Final Cut that just put a giant gap clip on the primary and then attached everything to it because they weren't really comfortable with magnetic editing. And Andy had done part of that. And you're, I need to sit down and talk to you because there's so much more. But without being that super sophisticated with the software, he's still crushing it in terms of content and building a gigantic user. So yes, great to know more and more about how to operate your software, but the fundamental idea of how to connect with an audience and get content out that people want to watch still trumps all the keyboard shortcuts in the world. You should learn the keyboard shortcuts. I'm not saying you shouldn't.
Absolutely.
They're great.
Absolutely.
They're fabulous. But ideas first, mechanics second, please.
Absolutely. Now, what did Apple say about, was there a question about subscriptions for the future for Final Cut? I know they didn't answer specifically. Did they give any hint about subscriptions for Final Cut like they did for the iPad version?
Well, this latest update, they said there's no for the desktop app. So definitely not 10.7. It is the reasoning I heard for the iPad app, and I don't remember who said this, but it makes sense to me that users like younger people who can't really just pay like $300 out of the gate for an app. So to give them something that's, $50 a year, $100 a month is just a lot more approachable as an entry-level thing. So I think that's the reasoning behind it. Also, Richard, I did find
$4.99.
$4.99, so $5. Yeah.
Go ahead, Brad.
Yeah, $5. I referenced CNET, Wall Street Journal, and not Daring Fireball, just Wall Street Journal, CNET, and 9 to 5 reporting that spatial video editing will come to Final Cut sometime next year. I can't track down exactly the original source, but it has been reported by CNET.
Yeah, I knew I saw an official
I have no
report.
doubt. I have no doubt it will be supported. Cinematic mode was supported. Spatial video recording was supported. The question is, will it be, kind of limited, like the way I think cinematic mode could be more, give you more access to depth maps and things like that, but it doesn't. There's keyframes and things. Is it going to be like that, or are they going to open this up to 3D workflows for any format? Which is something, as a professional, I would like to see Apple allow you to record 3D video that could be played back in Vision Pro from any camera format. But we just have this word that it'll be, the iPhone.
Well, is that a licensing thing for the codecs, Brad? Is that mostly about licensing? Because that now we're back to the why won't they license Canon RAW or B-RAW for use in final
3D
they do
workflows. Canon. I mean, it has nothing to do with codecs. I mean, not nothing, but it's not. You can record 2 streams of video in ProRes or whatever and have a left and right eye. And there are workflows to, get 3D working. But Resolve, for example, has 3D workflows. It hasn't been, in my opinion, a very pressing need. Like in 2013, 3D was this big hype thing, and then it kind of came back in 2016, 2017 with VR. And now that Apple's getting to Vision Pro, you'll have spatial video recording for the phone. But I would love to see if they do that workflow. I would love to see Final Cut expand it and allow you to use other cameras and formats and 3D workflows, not just. But my guess is the first iteration of it will be you can bring your spatial video clips in. They'll have some way to preview one or the other eye in the viewer, and if you're lucky enough to have Vision Pro, like Richard Taylor, who got one personally from Tim Cook, signed by him, then you could hook that up while you're editing and view all your spatial video through that. But I don't, in terms of 3D workflow, it's not really constrained by what codecs you're working in specifically.
Did we talk much about the scary fast thing, about how everybody was freaked out about the fact that was all shot on iPhones?
Well, the one comment that I had, Bill, was whoever was producing that event, they really missed the mark, because Tim Cook should have said one more thing at the end, flash that screen and then go to black.
Yeah.
Right? Don't you think? If you were producing
I don't think
that?
very many people who were interested missed it. That's all I heard along at the show, and everybody I talked to the next couple of days is they were blowing it up, putting it at the bottom of their signatures. It was a viral thing that kind of took off, and I've seen a lot of breakdowns. And interestingly enough, now this is something that I was surprised at. Apple did a thing shot on iPhone. They put up on their regular excuse me, I'm still getting over a little cold I picked up on my travels.
Yeah.
They had something, a music video that went up. Now, it's not, then they pulled it down. And then they put up the new one, which is Olivia Rodrigo. And then they pulled that down, and then they put up the Scary Fast video. So they've done 3 now major PR that were shot on iPhone inside of Apple. And it's just, it mirrors what I've been experiencing for the last 3 years. For the last 3 years since the pandemic really shut things, I've probably done 60 to 70% of my corporate work on an iPhone. And you have to be bold enough to show up with an iPhone and not, But I'll never forget the first gig that I did. I had to cover a street fair that one of my clients was sponsoring. And I showed up on my Blackmagic 6K and an iPhone on a monopod, just because I wanted something that would be kind of fun, and I could go up tall where the banners were and slip down low where the dogs were walking around the parade. And in 5 minutes, I just said, Linda, take the big camera, take the 6K back to the car. It's so inconvenient to try to shoot with this big hunk of metal, as opposed to being agile and being able to walk this parade and really interact with whatever I see, that I did the whole video on the iPhone. And from that point, like, please don't ask me to take the big camera out again. Come on. I'm in the event more. I'm getting better results, and the stuff looks fabulous. Why am I beating my head trying to do this? Obviously, there's plenty of reasons. If you're doing, sound, iPhones have not completely cracked that yet, in my opinion. But for things like run and gun shooting, and all the people in news and everything else who are going to them, that ship has sailed.
I've been very impressed with both my 14 and 15. Sometimes I'm shooting exactly what you said. I'm shooting with a Lumix camera, and I pulled my iPhone and said, looks better.
I know,
this looks better.
That computational photography and video stuff,
whatever the heck,
good.
And then the Apple log is phenomenal. It is absolutely phenomenal. I have a look at this. This is a 4 terabyte drive that I have. 4 terabyte compared to this is much smaller than the other Samsungs that I have, wherever the heck they are. Here it is, the Samsungs. And when I hook this up with the black, here's the Samsung, and here's my 4 terabyte Crucial. When I hooked it up to my iPhone during the Creative Summit, and I used the Blackmagic camera app to record ProRes LT log, I had 26 hours of shooting Apple log ProRes LT with that 4 terabyte drive. I didn't get that much. I did get, let me show you what I did get. I did get, there, look at those two handsome gentlemen. I did get this. I got 1.5 terabytes of footage from Final Cut Creative Summit 2023. 1.5 terabytes. That's absolutely amazing. Now, one of the other things, this shocked me. This was a scene I was shooting. You can see my camera, my Lumix, a little teeny screen, filming the actual light, and then on the right-hand side is what the Lumix S5 Mark II X recorded. It's a low light monster. Which is one of the reasons I bought it, was to shoot in these darker classrooms. I was amazed. The one on the left is the actual light. The one on the right is what my Lumix S5 Mark II X actually shot.
It's crazy. From the time I saw those Sony low light cameras, I've just realized that the whole game has changed in terms of low light capture, and that's great that Lumix and other people are doing the same thing. It's making it easier to get watchable in what used to be terrible circumstances.
No, well, the Lumix is a full frame. It is a full frame camera, so of course it would do better in low light. And I did have an f1.8 lens, a prime on it, so that also helps with the low light situation. But even with the Lumix, sometimes I pulled out if there was enough light in the room. Sometimes I pulled up my iPhone 15 Pro Max and it looked better. I said I like this better, so I would switch off to that one. Sometimes I use both of the cameras, but I did record, like I said, I did record the tips and the tricks, the entire tips and tricks, the intro with iJustine and then Storm Smiths. I did record all of those presentations from front to back. Sometimes using both cameras. Now the audio is a little bit, I had a shotgun mic, but I'm still getting room audio. I wasn't hooked into the board or anything, so. Good old Final Cut in voice isolation, that helps.
People are talking about that a lot in the voiceover industry. It's just these better tools for knocking out room noise. It's just fast developing.
It is, absolutely. I haven't even launched Logic 10.8 yet. I haven't any need to use it, but I haven't updated it. Now, one thing, everybody, before you update your Final Cut Pro to 10.7, make a backup copy of 10.6.10, please. How many people say,
or if you forgot to do it, be like me and email Richard Taylor for his backup.
How do I recover?
I have an original MacBook Pro, okay? The thing's about an inch thick, not really, but it seems like it. And on that, I have Final Cut Pro 10. I have Final Cut Pro 7.0.3 and Final Cut Pro 10.0 on that machine.
Wow!
I still have both of those. Every once in a while, I start them up.
Time machine. Put it in a time capsule.
Yeah, I mean, what am I going to do with it now? I'm not going to sell it. So.
Wow.
So what else did we get? So everybody, Bill, what was your rating of this 2023 Creative Summit compared to the other ones you've been to? Would you give it like
It was frustrated, and it was frustrated because I only had 1.5 days. I could only break away from my schedule, so I flew out Monday morning. I was there for the Apple Day. I got to spend about a second day. I wish I had been able to stay because it was really enjoyable. First of all, just I've been around this for so long. I know so many people, so it was great to see Richard and Cirina and Brad and everybody that I know. That was, this. A lot of people think when they get into this, it's about what you own. And, you need equipment and the rest of that, and we're all going to go after that. But really, it's a matter of relationships you make along the way that really changes your career.
Absolutely.
I learned that early at NAB. It's not about what you see, it's about who you meet. And if you're lucky, you meet somebody who really has a profound impact on your career forever. In fact, one of the things that I did, go ahead, Cirina, and then I've got one last little thing I want to say.
Go ahead, Cirina.
I just was going to compliment at the FCP Summit. Nick Peraz, who is the program director, and all the people working under him were just amazing. They were so kind and so on top of everything. And Ben was there, and it was kind of great to see the family again. Not just all of us, but all the people that worked so hard to put this on for us. They really did a good job. I just say thank you.
Yeah, they did a great job. Ben and that whole crew did fabulously. Plus, people came in from all over the world. We saw the Australian contingent was there. Not as many from Great Britain. Ian was there. And not Ian, but Ben.
Alex.
Alex, thank you. Alex Goldner flew in from London at the last minute. We had hopes to see a new Final Cut only because Alex had to travel out.
Hey, there's Tangier.
Tangier was there. Yeah, it was really great to see so many old friends, and so I'm going to try to absolutely clear my schedule next year to do it again because it was great to see everybody. I try to come away from every time I go to a show. I try to come away with one thing that I want to keep in my brain, and so I actually had 5 things, but I'm not going to go through all 5. But the last one of which, my number one takeaway from this show, just for what it's worth for everybody who's watching this show, Steve Martin in his presentation, he was talking about roles. And I went to everything that had to do with roles because I'm fascinated with them. But he said from the stage, people who know how will always work for the people who know why. And if I didn't take away one thing from this, that alone was enough in terms of reordering my thinking to say, all this study to figure out how to push the buttons isn't really going to advance me over everybody I'm competing against. But if I can figure out why I'm pushing the buttons, what the end goal is, that might accelerate me past my competition. So thank you, Steve Martin, for a brilliant little gem.
Brad, what are you working on now? What are you working on, editing-wise?
What do you mean? Like, what system am I using?
Well, just know the projects you're working on. Are you? I know you've been using DaVinci.
I cut now on my watch. Actually, there's a watch app.
Is it rendered yet? Is your watch rendered?
Well, before I say that, I wanted to actually comment on. I mean, that was a brilliant quote by Steve Martin. It's actually over the last 2 or 3 years. I haven't in that phrasing, but that's exactly what I've come to realize in my own career. Is that just because you have all the answers of how to do something and every tool and every little thing, those people end up doing a lot of the grunt work. If you can crack that code and really solve the problems of the client wants solved on that why, it really does advance you a lot. The other thing I was going to say about the summit is I thought that it was a fantastic program. Unfortunately, this isn't really, I gathered, all on FNC. I think it was just the summit was decided a little bit later and we couldn't get back to the Juniper. But I didn't enjoy the convention center, especially with another convention going on at the same time, and the accommodations as much. I felt like when we were in one place and there was a little bit more, and the same place that we were sleeping is the same place where we were having the event. I feel like there was more opportunities to have more conversations, and I think it was a little bit better. This was still great, but I think it was better, and I'm hoping next year Apple agrees to do this earlier and that we are able to get a more suitable venue. It was definitely weird walking into the building and trying to figure out where we're supposed to go, and there's all these signs and people from another convention. And there's a couple funny stories from that, by the way. One is a guy ran up to me and he's like, "Do I know you look familiar?" And I'm like, "I don't know, do you?" And he's from the other convention. He's like, No, I don't. Sorry to interrupt. And then I guess Mark, he was going around and interviewing people, and hopefully he puts together a video we can see of this. And but he did accidentally pull up the camera, and he said there's a foreign guy with an accent, so he didn't completely understand what he was saying at first. But he was there for the other convention, and Mark didn't realize it. So he was, interviewing about the Final Cut Creative Summit, and he's like, it took him a minute because he's like adjusting audio levels and checking his exposure. It's like, what this guy is saying, no sense at all. And instead of embarrassing him, he just let him finish and then said, "Oh, thank you for sharing your thoughts." Because the other convention had a video crew going around and talking to people, so I'm sure he just thought it was for that. And then Lee was about to start his session, and then a gentleman who's sitting there pulls up a paper printout schedule and was like asking about, "Oh, which session is this?" And Lee's like, "Oh, sir, sorry, yeah, you're at the wrong event." You can stay if you want to. And the guy's like, "Yeah, this looks really interesting, but I'll go." So, I mean, those were, I guess, the fun things about having two things going on next door to each other. But I feel like overall, next year, if we can have our own place and we can all kind of be together. I know a lot of people stayed at that loft, but it filled up. And I stayed with Gabe at an Airbnb where we could save a little bit of money. And I know other people, stayed at other hotels around the area, and it was not more so. It was just not the most fun area. It was so, next to the stadium, and it's so industrial. There's like some hotels, but not a lot of great food places, and and you had to travel a little bit. So I had a car, so I could overcome the food problem. But
speaking of traveling a little bit,
takeaway.
Serina and I went out for looking for cream for our coffee. Thanks, she had a Tesla, and that Tesla had like a 24-inch screen in it, whatever the heck that touch screen was. It was the biggest screen I've ever seen. And she just punched in there, where can I get Richard some cream for his coffee? And we had the map drawn.
You were that specific? Not anybody else cream for their coffee, but Richard cream.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And did the card come back with Richard particularly likes 2%?
Yeah.
No, we got our half and half, or whipped cream. I don't remember. It was cream. We got our. It was hard to find though, but we found it.
Yeah.
Richard and I always he brings his coffee for him. I bring my coffee for me. We're not staying together. Don't get the wrong idea. We both just love coffee. And yeah, the cream was great. And the other thing that happened was I had to charge the Tesla at Harris Ranch on my way in. And so I ran in and I got barbecue cups, and I had 3 days worth of barbecue for breakfast. It saved me a lot of money on breakfast because I put it in the fridge. And the other thing, Richard, we were talking about this, those late night cheeseburgers and fries at the Aloft were really good. 10 o'clock
they
at
were.
night.
Yeah, because we had to eat something. It was late night. We get back that they served till 10 o'clock. So the actual hotel was nice. I liked the Aloft. It was nice. It's like Brad said, I think their intention was to have it at the Juniper, and I think Juniper couldn't accommodate them this year for late booking or they had another convention.
It was booked up that week, and Apple events only had a certain window to get us into the park, so that was the compromise for the event.
So what do you think about the park itself?
Oh gosh, it's beautiful.
It is an experience.
But we've heard about the landscaping around the ring and around the visitor center, but to see the ring and the way the windows open to let the breeze flow through the building, and
that was the windows were 5 stories tall. Is that what they said, or 3 stories?
No, I think
pull up your picture, Bill.
They're huge.
More like 5.
They were.
No, I'm not pulling up my picture. I'll get banned.
You look at it. Don't show it to us.
It's such a beautiful picture.
I think they were 5 stories tall, curved glass, the biggest curved glass in the world, and it's 1 mile around, and that glass gets cleaned every night. That's what they said. And I have a hard time. There's some kind of a supernatural cleaning of the glass.
But there was something
Apple
about
glass cleaning bots.
And then it's all clear, really clean grass. And then there was a little bit of, I felt like people walk into the glass because it's almost like the inside and the outside are one. It's
I have a story about walking into glass. So do you remember when Apple Park first opened up, people were walking the doors. You had to put stickers on the doors so you could see it. And I may have heard one person from Apple tell me that they jokingly refer to those as Johnny's tears. Johnny Ive, who designed the Apple Park building. The little stickers that to prevent you from walking in, but it breaks the whole illusion a little bit. But it also prevents people from being majorly injured because there's a lot of glass in that building.
Oh, it's 1 mile around, right? It's glass all the way around, isn't it?
And tons inside. All the doorways and all that.
There's detailed pictures on the internet here. I'm looking at it. Architizer.com. There's a lot of detail about these.
Well, they described them as stories tall. It was either 3 or 5 stories tall. They said it was the biggest curved glass panels in the world. And they opened up. The one section opened up by the cafeteria. Now, the question I asked was, Tim Cook have a button in his office he can just press that randomly and open them up and close them, open them, close them. Of course, Here,
I'll risk this. You should only look at the badge photo on this, nothing else. Okay.
Hey, well,
so everybody can stop. I'm showing you the badge.
Okay, show us the badge, Bill. Go ahead.
There's the badge to get into Apple Park. Not that anything else is of interest.
Oh, we're not going to be invited back now.
No, there's plenty of pictures of Apple Park. Yeah.
It is, I will say this, it is stunning. The attention to detail they took into every piece of this. I was there for a different thing a year or two ago or something like that. And I came out of a parking garage toward the spaceship. And when I was walking across, it was interesting. I was saying to myself, my gosh, this is absolutely beautiful. It's just a ways away from the circular building. And I was walking through something that looked like scrubland. But I thought, my gosh, how beautiful. They picked this beautiful natural area. And then I suddenly realized that even this open area that looked like a natural field was probably perfectly designed by a landscape architect to look like an utterly natural, untouched. That was beautiful. I'm sure it was not. That's the expression of the landscape architect's art. And they talked to us. They did walk us around and say, here's this kind of landscaping, and here's why they picked this, and they've got all these fruit trees, and the fruit comes off, and they serve it in the cafeteria, and also to the food banks in the area. So they were giving us the reasons that they designed Apple Park the way they did. But the artistic energy put into that place really was stunningly magnificent. And you come out of it and you're just going, wow, this is really beautiful.
I was surprised they actually have fruit that comes out of there. Like you said, it goes to thousands of pounds every year.
Yep.
And some of it goes to the cafeteria, some goes to the food pantries in the area, which is really, really great.
Every bush, grass, tree was hand selected to work in that. They knew the climate they were working in. They knew what they wanted to achieve in terms of yield off of the fruit and things like that. And they had all the time and money and the passion to do that.
I like the different homage to various parts of California too. Northern California had certain kind of installations, and Southern California had something else. And I mean, even if you look at the way they planted the grass, they planted different species of grass to make a path. I mean, it was just beautiful. I also love the fact that they said that when they moved in and they started working on it was 80% concrete and 20% natural. And by the time they were done, it had flipped. And it was 20% concrete and 80% natural. And they repurposed all the concrete to build the building. But in the process, because they had to dig it out, they created some berms that hid the freeway and created the wind draft that then moves up and goes into the building when the windows are open on both sides, goes in and out. And they don't have traditional air conditioners in there. It's all cooled naturally.
They don't have
I was saying on the landscaping, if you go to the Stanford campus and there's a popular hiking area, the Stanford Dish, that landscape I think was the inspiration for a lot of the paths and those little berms and hills that you can walk around.
So
they specifically said there was a design. They wanted people to wander and interact. And so they designed it so there's a lot of very attractive, just wander, meet somebody that you hadn't seen in a while, talk a little bit, share ideas.
For some reason, I really like the idea that it's 1 mile around. I really like that because I walk 2 miles every morning. So if I worked there, I would just walk 2 miles around and I know I'd be done.
Yeah.
So people have to realize there's a couple of things. Number one, Final Cut Pro is not going the way of Aperture. They categorically said it's not. They update Final Cut Pro based on their schedule, period. No matter, yes, it may not be as fast as we would like, some of us, me, but they are updating it on their schedule the way they want to update it. So I was ecstatic with the scrolling timeline. You can't believe how happy I was. I wasn't expecting it. Somebody told me at lunch, I don't know if Brad, if it was at the table I was talking with you. Okay.
I just said it as a guess. Are you going to get that scrolling timeline, Richard? I had no idea. And then that was the first thing up. And I was like, Well, what you can be wrong 99 times, and then the one time I was right.
Right, exactly. So I'm really looking forward to 10.7 just because I can, after all these years, finally get that scrolling timeline, which I use because I use audio waveforms so much all the time. Yeah, I use it in Logic, and I really missed it in Final Cut. Now I don't have to worry about it.
Richard, I would also add to your comments about the updates and how they're going to be on their schedule. A couple of things I walked away with. One is now that the iPad app is out in the wild, that seemed to take a lot of resources over whatever period of time, presumably the last few years, or at least couple years. And now that that's out, they can take some of those resources and just work on developing and building features and releasing features. The other thing is, Bill Davis in his presentation gave us kind of a look back, and then he said that we like to look at this as a new chapter. We're opening a new era for Final Cut Pro and forward. This is where we've been, but now we're starting a new thing. So I think that I would not be based off of kind of a medium update. It's more significant than we've gotten in the last 2 or 3 years. I would hope that we start, maybe it won't be as crazy as it was between 2011 and 2018, but I hope that we can expect at least updates like this, if not a little bit bigger moving forward. And I also think that it is our job as users of the application to put pressure on Apple, on the Pro Apps team, to regularly update this software. So I hope we don't get too let down and disappointed when we don't get everything we want. Like, we have to have some perspective. But if we relent and say, oh, I don't care, don't update it, that's not the best thing for the application, and that's not the best thing for the community. It's definitely not the best thing for Apple.
No relenting, Brad. Nobody's relenting. I'm just saying that we have to realize that they're going to listen. They're going to do this update on their schedule. I'm not saying we have to be satisfied with that. It's not what I'm saying. Yeah. I'm just saying that that's what they told us, that they are updating it on their schedule. They're not listening now. Once again, they reiterated all the emails that you send in are read. Suggestions, bug fixes. We had an unprecedented bug situation in August of this year. We had a bug that was introduced. We had an update 2 weeks later. We had a second bug, the motion VFX bug. We had an update 2 weeks later.
That's bug.
FX plug. Never been done before. We have never had that kind of a 2-week turnaround on Final Cut Pro, even though they were bug fixes. We never had that before. So that was a very interesting time period. And then they came out with a Final Cut Pro update for the iPhone because of the iPhone 15.
Yeah, well, and I also add, when you're talking about them listening, another thing I was surprised to see in Bill Davis's presentation was when he did the look back, he specifically called out the dupe detection video that Chris Fenwick made and mentioned that for our crowd, because that was a video that Chris shot, I think in 2019 at that Creative Summit. And I know I'm in it and Cirina's in it, and other people in our community in it. And so, like, acknowledging that, like, we see you, we know you're the community, and we know your things. All that is sort of tying into what they said in the Q&A, which was, we not only look at the feedback, but if there's a lot of similar requests, we're going to pay more attention to those. And I know dupe detection was one of those. They probably, when they did use media indicators and some of that, oh, we've kind of solved that already. But the fact that users were so vocal to the point of making a video and sending it directly to the team that then they acknowledge, I think proves that, you can build up some momentum. Maybe we need, to do like the hashtag release the Snyder Cut version of that for specific things that we all agree on.
Well, the other thing is, remember, for years, we had the color tools, not the color wheels. We had the color board. And for years, they told us, that's what you need is the color board. And then they came out with the color wheels and the color board. because people wanted color wheels. So that's another situation where they did listen. They had an idea, the color board, but they listened to feedback, especially professionals who are used to the wheels, and they have the hardware. I don't know. Did the wheels even respond to hardware these days? Is it tied in at all?
Only with command post. So command post will allow you to use like the tangent panels.
Okay.
That would be something that I would really, really like to see them enable. Especially with tangent panels and other panels. I do see people using Steam Decks and other things in very creative ways to interact with Final Cut as well.
Yeah. So go ahead.
Presentation hardware. Ian's presentation on hardware. Did you guys see that?
I didn't see that one.
Yeah.
I didn't see that one. I saw his other one.
Yeah, he was demonstrating that equipment that could work with the, I forget, is it called the Moment? What's it called? Because I put it on my list.
That sounds right. That sounds about right, the Moment.
And it works really well. We got to stop talking about gear. This is nuts.
No, that's what
we're maxing out her credit card.
This is Bill's opinion. I do think color correction is going to diminish over the course of time because I think AI and ML will do a much better job of that continuing into the future. Because a lot of color correction, white balancing, and things like that is algorithmic rather than application of art. I'm not saying great color correctors aren't valuable. Please don't misunderstand me.
Yeah.
And the ones that I brilliant, but grading, that stuff I think is machine learnable.
I would have some of it.
Shot matching and white balance, I think we already see tools that help with that. Yeah. But I also definitely think that having worked with some clients that are very particular, are going for very particular moods and something unique but familiar, that is trust that I don't think that will be placed on a machine when it comes to. That's the beautiful thing about all these tools. Get rid of the mundane, hard, like just tedious things, and get us to the creative stuff.
I gotta dive out, folks. My dog is driving me crazy. Sorry, but Charlie definitely needs to go outside, I think. So I have to take care of him.
All right. Good to see you, Bill.
Absolutely.
So,
thanks, Bill.
Good to see you.
Bill, tell us where to go to listen to some of your books you're narrating.
Oh, any of the services, Apple, iTunes, Audible. Look for a book called Bitrot, B-I-T-T, Bitrot. That's the first one that I think is widely distributed out there. I've done 7 novels at this point that are on, wow. And it's a really good book. Jason Baronet, the young author, is just outstanding. So it was a privilege to work with him. So yeah, Amazon or any of those, B-I-T-R-O-T, Bitrot.
Fantastic.
Thanks.
Thanks, Bill. Thanks for tuning in.
Bill.
Now we're going to switch over to.
Oh, there we go.
Let me see.
Wait,
I'm going
that's the wrong one.
I didn't have that set up. Here we go. There we go.
Cirina,
I have to.
People in the chat room. We have some great people.
There's a lot of chat, yeah.
Yeah, we have a lot of. I just want to alleviate some of the comments over the aperture thing was a big one. It's going the way of aperture. We had it categorically denied. Somebody said you can't believe what corporations say. Well, I realize that, but in this case, I do believe what they said. I was very ecstatic, of course, because of the scrolling timeline, but other things as well. The energy level of the creative sonars, never been to one. This was the highest energy level of any of them. It just was because of different things, because of some of the younger generation being in there, and Brad, you're included in that, even though you've been to them before. But other things about it, this was a really, really good one. I just came away feeling really good. Then the other thing was we got an update. I mean, compared to 2019, which we didn't get anything. That was an extra bonus. Absolutely. So my expectations have been brought up now. I'm like right in the middle here.
I think for me, best summit since 2017. I do feel like there's energy in 2017 and 2016 that was insane. I feel like with the slow of update, the COVID years and the updates being slowed down, there was a lot of healing that took place at this event. And like I said, I go back to like catching up with some people, talking to them as people. There's been people have missed each other a lot over the last few years. So that was my favorite thing about it.
No, absolutely. I think everybody agrees that the camaraderie of the Final Cut Pro community, this is the biggest Final Cut Pro event of the year. This is the biggest one. Nothing else compares to this one. This is dedicated to Final Cut Pro and a little bit of motion. They didn't have any Logic this time, but that's not unusual. And then Final Cut for the iPad.
They showed Logic. They did show
yes,
Logic
they did.
in the presentation.
They did, which is
updates.
At the Final Cut Pro team presentation at Apple Park. They certainly did, which was really, really nice. Although I use it for audio and just regular audio and for music for both. So, but I haven't got 10.8 yet. Now listen, before you get Final Cut Pro 10.7, before it comes out, back up your app. Back up any important libraries, the database. Don't sit there and just jump into it. Oh, I had auto update on. I see this all the time. Oh, why did Final Cut update by itself? That's because you didn't have your settings properly. We're telling you now, back up your app, back up any important libraries that you have.
I'm dog.
Richard, I think your next episode, you should reach out to Hedge and PostLab because we didn't even touch on that. And we're coming up on a couple hours, so I'm not even going to go into it too deep. But there are some very exciting updates to PostLab coming in 2024.
There certainly
I think
are.
will change the way you work with not just Final Cut, but other applications. So
it is.
I know you've had Jasper on before. I would get those guys.
Well,
on.
they were a sponsor. They sponsored Final Cut TV to go to the Creative Summit, and so did CoreMelt. And both of those companies have new products coming out. And when I saw the Hedge presentation, I wasn't sure what I could talk about because some of the things were just for the Creative Summit. And when I interviewed him, I said, "No, you have to say what you can talk about because I'm going to say the wrong thing." So I interviewed Isaac at the live stream. That live stream was crazy. Was just absolutely crazy. It was really good, though. Mark Spencer and Steve Martin were the first two on the live stream. They were waiting there, and I brought them on. Brad, of course, was on. Michael Yanovich was on. Spencer came on. Cirina came on. It's just, but the way I had it set up was, I'm not sure it just happened. Whatever, it just happened. It was okay.
I thought you did a great job. And Brad, thanks for bringing that up. I'm going to interview Isaac, too, because those guys have been working really hard, and they have some amazing new features. And don't we have a great community?
We do.
It was just wonderful to see everybody. I have to run too. My dog Pebbles is also saying, "Mom, you've been on here long enough." So I'm sorry, but I'm going to have to take off too. Thank you, Richard, for having
Absolutely.
And you both.
Absolutely. I'm going to go ahead and, Brad, you want to hang on? I'm going to go ahead and go off too then, unless you want to hang out for a minute.
I'd say in the live stream, and we can chat after if you want to.
Okay.
I'll hang out for a minute. I got to eat. I'm hungry.
Well, there you go. What happened to your subs being delivered? Like that happened one time we were live and your subs came to the door. That only happened once?
I didn't even ask for that. They just came by the office. I don't know. I'm at home now, so they don't just walk into my house.
Okay. You can go ahead and go, Cirina. We're good. Thank you. I'll talk to you offline. I'll talk to you offline.
Take care.
Absolutely. Look at that. Jim Tierney. What is he doing over there? I just had, wait a minute. Come on now. Where's my camera? Guess one. No.
I'm not on there.
Replace asset. Wait a second. Replace asset.
This is Richard's tutorial on Ecamm Live.
Why isn't it set? I want to replace it. Oh, here we go. I was clicking on the wrong thing. I was clicking on the wrong button. It said asset, and I said, Brad's not an asset. Brad's a very important editor for Final Cut.
I would like to be considered an asset as well as
So,
a human.
so how do you, just real quick before we go off, DaVinci Resolve versus Final Cut, are you comfortable on each one pretty much now, or?
Yeah,
And
I definitely think I'm comfortable with Resolve. I use it for a lot of different things.
Who is this BB Melanson?
This is my friend, my friend Bob in Diego, not far from. Oh no, he lives in Temecula, not
Okay.
far from San Diego.
He keeps making
And,
Bradley comments, that's why.
Yeah. Bob's awesome.
Very good. So do you have anything special that you liked about the summit? I mean, the camaraderie, the visit to Apple Park, those things, anything else specifically? I mean, to me, look, if I hadn't made this one and they had the scrolling timeline, I wasn't there, I would have just been like, okay, I'm just not going to talk about Final Cut anymore. I was just shocked. I was just, and I still am waiting for it. Come on, where is it? You know, I want to start scrolling my timeline. Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, I think we covered pretty much everything that I was excited about. I loved seeing the Final Cut team. I know you had a episode of FCP Radio where you called out the people who left Apple, and that was sad to see so many talented people move on to other places and other parts of their career,
right,
and not be on Final Cut anymore. But then to attend and see familiar faces and some new faces, like we met Will, who's the product manager of the iPad app, and he seems like just a really enthusiastic and bright person.
Right.
And we also saw Bill Davis's new boss, Brian O'Neill Hughes, who comes from Adobe, but I was assured that he is very enthusiastic to be at Apple and work on Final Cut, and it's not an Adobe spy, so that made me feel better. But yeah, I mean, just to meet some new faces on the team, and to also see familiar faces like Greg Niles, who was on Motion and now is overall Pro Video Apps, and I think he's a really brilliant person. And then also, like you all said before, like we have this almost, passing the torch sort of moment where we have younger people presenting, and not against any former presenters. And of course we have repeat presenters from previous years.
Yes.
But I think in previous years I've felt less motivated, like, to see certain presentations, mostly because I'd seen those same people speak over and over, and seen their YouTube videos, and there wasn't like anything new. And then to have this new crop of people show up, and even the returning people have some new presentations, and not just doing the same old thing. I thought the presentations were stellar, maybe some of the best presentations we've had in any event. And I by no means caught all of them, but I sat in a lot more of that. I think previously I used to hang out in the halls a lot more at the Juniper. But this year I kind of found myself like, I do want to go see that panel. I do want to see what they're saying. And they were fantastic.
They were. I agree with everything you said. I tried to get in. I think I taped everybody at least 5 or 10 minutes of every presentation. So it's more for them. So they'll have a record. And if there's any special clips that I have, I'll put them together, a little compilation. But the interviewing people with a lunchroom was Future Media conferences supplied box lunches every lunch, which was nice. Every day.
To see a little more variety with those box lunches, but they were good.
Well, yeah, they have a survey form you can fill out and suggest those things. Yeah, but between Future Media and Apple, those are the two big forces that have to come together and work out the schedules.
And I did one other criticism, and I found from FMC, this was not on them, but the conference venue itself was responsible for the AV setups. And I really felt like they dropped the ball on like lighting our presenters, and they were very slow. Like sometimes somebody wouldn't even be there to fix an audio thing, so someone from FMC would run over and like try to figure out what was going on. So I felt like, again, if I had any complaints, it had more to do with that conference center than it did anything to do with Apple or FMC.
Yeah, the lighting's always an issue because they don't do lights. They just do overhead lights. Everything's on in the room or everything's kind of off. And so people's faces are in the dark, which is one of the reasons I brought my Lumix S5 Mark II, because I could still, it's like a military camera. Something you can see regardless. So I do have that. So a lot of them, I don't have it every session, but I have some of the sessions. But anyway, I was great creative summit.
I hope next year, I'd love to see, like, we had 170 attendees, I heard.
Okay, that sounds about right, which is good.
And I think if they grow, I was the biggest attended one so far as I'm aware. I think I would love to see next year those numbers grow to, 200, 250, 300 people. I think, especially with the iPad app being out, I think that makes it a little more accessible as well. So whatever FMC can do, whatever Apple can do to just make the event more accessible and get those numbers up, I think it creates it's a really great energy.
I agree. So yeah, 170 is a lot because I think the previous numbers were more like closer to 150. So anyway, scrolling timeline. Here we are. Where is it? I'm looking for I can't wait to open my projects, and I got a scrolling time after all of these years. Don't give up. Don't give up your feature requests, okay? I'm living proof of that. Finally.
Yep.
I'm not the only one. A lot of people wanted the scrolling timeline. Philip Hodges wanted it. Cirina wanted it. Scott Simmons has talked about the missing scrolling timeline from when 10.0 was out. We went back and forth a few times about it, so. But it's really important that I have that, and I finally have it. Is that what your favorite feature was? What else was your favorite feature? And then we'll get out.
Honestly, that collapsing connected clips, only because I've had to work with a number of other editors. I think that cleaning up the timeline, especially for turnovers and things, has been really important to me. So that's the one I'm most excited to get my hands on and see what the limitations are, see how it works.
See what the rules are for that. Yeah, I'm interested in that myself.
Exactly. And I think that'll be the biggest workflow thing for me. But the scrolling timeline, drawing waveforms faster, I think if they can, just keep doing things like that in the app, it follows that philosophy of keeping the performance really good and making the app, like Bill said, kind of disappear and you're focused on your media. It's very, very Final Cut to do that. And
well, 10.7 and this Creative Summit has definitely reinvigorated my enthusiasm for Final Cut. Not that it was low anyway. I mean, it's always been, kind of through the roof, but, some points we want the features, we want to see the updates that have features, not just the bug fixes. And we finally we're getting that with 10.7. I have a feeling this is going to be, 10.7 is going to be a nice steady group of features as it goes along and gets to whatever the next version is. Well, Brad, you take care of Utah.
Will do.
I'll take care of the East Coast, and I will see you on the next time you're on Final Cut TV.
Great.
All right.
Thanks for having me on. Bye.
Absolutely. Talk to you later. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in. Thanks for the thumbs up. Thanks for all the viewers. You're the best audience there is for Final Cut. Talk to you later.